Good day, everybody. It is the Desert Viking, and today we will be pushing into the Builder's Workshop with Section 8 of the Kybalion, the Planes of Correspondance. I am the Desert Viking, and for those new, I am an esoteric Freemason, and I am in the process of creating these videos for the simple purpose of answering the question that I most commonly get. And that common question is simply, where do I even begin? There's so much out there. Where do you even begin? And I agree. There's a lot out there, and it can be quite daunting, especially if you've never had any experience or even know where to begin. So I have selected this work right here, the Kybalion, to begin talking about where to begin. And the reason I did that is that the Kybalion distills the philosophy of Hermes Trismegistus. Hermetical philosophy forms the cornerstone of a lot of mystery school philosophies, thinking, ritual, etc. So this is getting about as close to the source as it gets. And to me, that's very important and something I want you to consider before we even begin. Whenever you pick up a book or you listen to an author or speaker like myself, understand that that is another human being putting their opinion for you to consider. When we're dealing with things that in some cases stretch back thousands of years, there is no person who can say they know everything or claim to know everything. And if they do, you need to be very wary of that. I do not know everything. I'm simply sharing what I have learned, and this is all in my own opinion. You have to figure your own opinion out for yourself. And this, because I like to go as close to the source of the truth as I can, this book right here is pulling from that, which is why I wanted to begin with it. But anytime you pick up a book or you want to read up on anything, really, bear in mind that you're reading someone else's opinion in a lot of cases. And it's always good to find authors who can cite their sources so that you can kind of climb up the ladder of who's who and where'd you get your information from. Because just because you like an author doesn't mean that they're pulling data from somewhere that's credible. All right, so today we are going to talk about the planes of correspondence. This is a few pages long, so if you would journey with me, let's go ahead and begin with Chapter 8. As above, so below, and as below, so above. The great second Hermetic principle embodies the truth that there is a harmony, agreement, and correspondence between the several planes of manifestation, life, and being. This truth is a truth because all that is included in the universe emanates from the same source, and the same laws, principles, and characteristics apply to each unit or combination of units of activity as each manifests its own phenomena upon its own plane. For the purpose of convenience, of thought and study, the Hermetic philosophy considers that the universe may be divided into three great classes of phenomena, known as the three great planes, thusly named: number 1, the great physical plane; number 2, the great mental plane; and number 3, the great spiritual plane. As I will interject at this point, as you study other aspects of esotericism, you're going to find the number 3 pops up quite a bit, especially when it comes to man and our 3 different layers. So keep that one in mind. Circle that. It's important. These divisions are more or less artificial and arbitrary, for the truth is that all of the 3 divisions are but ascending degrees of the great scale of life, the lowest point of which is undifferentiated matter, and the highest point is that of spirit. And moreover, the different planes shade into each other so that no hard and fast division may be made between the higher phenomena of the physical and the lower of the mental, or between the higher of the mental and the lower of the physical. In short, the 3 great planes may be regarded as 3 great groups of degrees of life manifestation. While the purpose of this little book did not allow us to enter into an extended discussion of or explanation of the subject of these different planes, shall we think it well to give a general description of the same at this point. At the beginning, we may as well consider the question so often asked by the neophyte, who desires to be informed regarding the meaning of the word plane. which term has been very freely used and very poorly explained in many recent works upon the subject of occultism. The question is generally about as follows. Is a plane a place having dimensions, or is it merely a condition or state? We answer, no, it's not a place, not an ordinary dimension of space, and yet more than a state or condition. It may be considered as a state or condition, and yet the state or condition is a degree of dimension, and a scale subject to measurement. Somewhat paradoxical, is it not? But let us examine the matter. A dimension, is a measure in a straight line relating to measure. The ordinary dimensions of space are length, breadth, and height, or perhaps length, breadth, height, thickness, or circumference. But there's another dimension of created things, or measure in a straight line, known to occultists and to scientists as well, although the latter have not yet applied the term dimension to it. And this new dimension, which, by the way, is the much speculated about fourth dimension, is the standard used in determining the degree or planes. This fourth dimension may be called the dimension of vibration. It is a fact well known to modern science, as well as to the Hermeticists, who have embodied the truth in their third Hermetic principle, that everything is in motion, everything vibrates, nothing is at rest. From the highest manifestation to the lowest, everything and all things vibrate. Not only do they vibrate at different rates of motion, but as in different directions and in a different manner. The degree of the rate of vibrations constitute the degrees of measurement on the scale of vibrations. In other words, the degrees of the fourth dimension. And these degrees form what occultists call planes. The higher the degree of rate of vibration, the higher the plane, and the higher the manifestation of life occupying that plane. So that while a plane is not a place, nor yet a state or condition, yet it possesses qualities common to both. We shall have more to say regarding the subject of the scale of vibrations in our next lessons, in which we shall consider the Hermetic principle of vibration. And here I will again interject that we have indeed string theory in physics. Quantum physics has determined that there are other dimensions. So, surprise, mysticism and science moving together and conjoining as it used to be. You will kindly remember, however, that the three great planes are not actual divisions of the phenomena of the universe, but merely arbitrary terms used by the Hermeticists in order to aid in the thought and study of the various degrees and forms of universal activity in life. The atom of matter, the unit of force, the mind of man, and the being of the archangel are all but degrees in one scale, and all fundamentally the same. The difference between solely a matter of degree and rate of vibration, all are creations of the all, and have their existence solely within the infinite mind of the all. The Hermeticists subdivide each of the three great planes into 7 minor planes, and each of these latter are also subdivided into 7 subplanes, all divisions being more or less arbitrary, shading into each other and adopted merely for convenience of scientific study and thought. The great physical plane, and its 7 minor planes, is that division of the phenomena of the universe, which includes all that relates to physics, or material things, forces, and manifestations. It includes all forms of that which we call matter, and all forms of that which we call energy or force. But you must remember that the Hermetic philosophy does not recognize matter as a thing in itself, or as having a separate existence, even in the mind of the all. The teachings are that matter is but a form of energy. That is energy at a low rate of vibration of a certain kind. And accordingly, the Hermeticists classify matter under the head of energy, and give to it 3 of the 7 minor planes of the great physical plane. These 7 minor physical planes are as follows: the plane of matter, the plane of matter B, the plane of matter C, the plane of ethereal substance, the plane of energy A, the plane of energy B, and the plane of energy C. The plane of matter A comprises the forms of matter and its forms of solid, liquid, and gas, as generally recognized by the textbooks on physics. The plane of matter B comprises certain higher and more subtle forms of matter, of the existence of which modern science is but now recognizing, the phenomena of radiant matter, in its phases of radium, etc., belonging to the lower subdivision of this minor plane. The plane of matter C comprises forms of the most subtle and tenuous matter, the existence of which is not suspected by ordinary scientists. The plane of ethereal substance comprises that which science speaks of as the ether, a substance of extreme tenuity and elasticity pervading all universal space, and acting as a medium for the transmission of waves of energy such as light, heat, electricity, etc. This ethereal substance forms a connecting link between matter and energy, and partakes of the nature of each. The Hermetic teachings, however, instruct that this plane has 7 subdivisions, as have all of the minor planes, and that in fact there are 7 ethers instead of 1. Next, above the plane of ethereal substance comes the plane of energy A, which comprises the ordinary forms of energy known to science, its 7 subplanes being respectively heat, light, magnetism, electricity, and attraction, to include gravitation, cohesion, chemical affinity, etc., and several other forms of energy indicated by scientific experiments but not as of yet named or classified. Now remember, this book was written in 1908. The plane of energy B comprises 7 subplanes of higher forms of energy not as yet discovered by science, but which have been called nature's finer forces, and which are called into operation in manifestations of certain forms of mental phenomena, and by which such phenomena becomes possible. The plane of energy C comprises 7 subplanes of energy so highly organized that it bears many of the characteristics of life, but which is not recognized by the minds of men on the ordinary plane of development, being available for the use of beings on the spiritual plane alone. Such energy is unthinkable to ordinary man, and may be considered almost as divine power. The beings employing the same are as gods compared to even the highest human types known to us. The great mental plane comprises those forms of living things known to us in ordinary life, as well as certain other forms not so well known except to the occultist. The classification of the 7 minor mental planes is more or less satisfactory and arbitrary, unless accompanied by elaborate explanations which are foreign to the purpose of this work, but we may as well mention them. They are as follows: the plane of mineral mind, the plane of elemental mind, the plane of plant mind, the plane of elemental mind B, the plane of animal mind, the plane of elemental mind C, the plane of human mind. The plane of mineral mind comprises the states or conditions of the units or entities or groups and combinations of the same, which animate the forms known to us as minerals, chemicals, etc. These entities must not be confounded with the molecules, atoms, and corpuscles themselves, the latter being merely the material bodies or forms of these entities, just as a man's body is but his material form, and not himself. These entities may be called souls in one sense, and are living beings of a low degree of development, life, and mind, just a little more than the units of living energy, which comprise the higher subdivisions of the highest physical plane. The average mind does not generally attribute the possession of mind, soul, or life to the mineral kingdom, but all occultists recognize the existence of the same, and modern science is rapidly moving forward to the point of view of the Hermetic in this respect. The molecules, atoms, and corpuscles have their loves and hates, likes and dislikes, attractions and repulsions. And some of the more daring of modern scientific minds have expressed the opinion that the desire and will, emotions and feelings of the atoms differ only in degree from those of men. We have no time or space to argue this matter here. All occultists know it to be a fact, and others are referred to some of the more recent scientific works for outside corroboration. There are the usual 7 subdivisions to this plane. The plane of elemental mind A comprises the state or condition and degree of mental and vital deployment of a class of entities unknown to the average man, but recognized to occultists. They are invisible to the ordinary senses of man, but nevertheless exist and play their part of the drama in the universe. Their degree of intelligence is between that of the mineral and chemical entities on the one hand, and of the entities of the plant kingdom on the other. There are 7 subdivisions to this plane also. The plane of plant mind, in its 7 subdivisions, comprises the states or conditions of the entities comprising the kingdoms of the plant world, the vital and mental phenomena of which is fairly well understood by the average intelligent person. Many new and interesting scientific works regarding mind and life in plants having been published during the last decade, and again, remember, this was written in 1908. Plants have life, mind, and souls, as well as have the animals, man, and Superman. The plane of elemental mind B, in its 7 subdivisions, comprises the states and conditions of a higher form of elemental or unseen entities, playing their part in the general work of the universe, the mind and life of which form a part of the scale between the plane of plant mind and the plane of animal mind, the entities partaking of the nature of both. The plane of animal mind, in its 7 subdivisions, comprises the states and conditions of the entities, beings, or souls, animating the animal forms of life familiar to us all. It is not necessary to go into details regarding this kingdom or plane of life, for the animal world is as familiar to us as is our own. The plane of elemental mind C, in its 7 subdivisions, comprises those entities or beings, invisible as are all such elemental forms, which partake of the nature of both human and animal life in a degree and in certain combination. The highest forms are semi-human in intelligence. The plane of human mind in its 7 subdivisions comprises those manifestations of life and mentality which are common to man in his various grades, degrees, and divisions. In this connection, we wish to point out the fact that the average man of today occupies but the 4th subdivision of the plane of human mind, and only the most intelligent have crossed the borders of the 5th subdivision. It has taken the race millions of years to reach this stage, and it will take many more years for the race to move on to the 6th and 7th subdivision and beyond. But remember that there have been races before us which have passed through these degrees and on to higher planes. Our own race is the 5th, with stragglers from the 4th, which has yet set foot upon the path. And then there are a few advanced souls of our own race who have outstripped the masses and who have passed on to the 6th and 7th subdivision, and some few being still further on. The man of the 6th subdivision will be the Superman. He of the 7th will be the Overman. And as another interjection, what they're referring to here also are the 7 epochs of man, of which we are in our current 5th state. If you wish to know more, and I may do a video on this in the future, you can research theosophy, and you can more specifically look up theosophy and the 7 epochs or the 7 races of men. Madame Blavatsky, I believe, was the first to speculate on this, and you can find a bunch of information about that if you're interested. Continuing. In our consideration of the 7 minor mental planes, we have merely referred to the 3 elementary planes in a general way. We do not wish to go into this subject in detail in this work, for it does not belong in this part of the general philosophy and teaching. But we may say this much, in order to give you a little clearer idea of the relations of these planes to the more familiar ones. The elementary planes bear the same relation to the planes of mineral, plant, animal, and human mentality and life that the black keys on the piano do to the white keys. The white keys are sufficient to produce music, but there are certain scales, melodies, and harmonies in which the black keys play their part, and in which their presence is necessary. They are also necessary as connecting links of soul condition, entity states, etc., between several other planes, certain forms of development being attained therein. This last fact giving to the reader who can read between the lines a new light upon the process of evolution and a new key to the secret door of the leaps of life being kingdom and kingdom. The great kingdoms of elementals are fully recognized by all occultists, and the esoteric writings are full of mention of them. The readers of Bulwer's Sinoni and similar tales will recognize the entities inhabiting these planes of life. Passing on from the great mental plane to the great spiritual plane, what shall we say? How can we explain these higher states of being, life, and mind to minds as yet unable to grasp and understand the higher subdivisions of the plane of the human mind? This task is impossible. We can speak only in the most general terms. How may light be described to a man born blind? How may sugar to a man who has never tasted anything sweet? How harmony to one born deaf? All that we can say is that the 7 minor planes of the great spiritual plane, each minor plane having its 7 subdivisions, comprise beings possessing life, mind, and form as far above that of man of today as the latter is above the earthworm, mineral, or even certain forms of energy or matter. The life of these beings so far transcends ours that we cannot even think of the details of the same. Their minds so far transcend ours that to them we scarcely seem to think, and our mental processes seem almost akin to a material process. The matter of which their forms are composed of is of the highest planes of matter. Nay, some are even said to be clothed in pure energy. What may even be said about such beings? On the 7 minor planes of the great spiritual plane exist beings of whom we may speak as angels, archangels, demigods. On the lower minor planes dwell those great souls who we call masters and adepts. Above them come the great hierarchies of the angelic hosts, unthinkable to man, and above those comes those who may without irreverence be called the gods. So high in the scale of being are they that their being, intelligence, and power being akin to those attributed by the races of men to their conceptions of deity. These beings are beyond even the highest flights of the human imagination, the word divine being the only one applicable to them. Many of these beings, as well as the angelic host, take the greatest interest in the affairs of the universe and play an important part in its affairs. These unseen divinities and angelic helpers extend their influence freely and powerfully in the process of evolution and cosmic progress. Their occasional intervention and assistance in human affairs have led to the many legends, beliefs, religions, and traditions of the past. They have superimposed their knowledge and power upon the world again and again, all under the law of the All. But yet even the highest of these advanced beings exist merely as creations of and in the mind of the All, and are subject to the cosmic processes and universal laws. They are still mortal. We may call them gods if we like, but they are but the elder brethren of the race, the advanced souls who have outstripped their brethren, and who have foregone the ecstasy of absorption by the All, in order to help the race on its upward journey along the path. But they belong to the universe, and are subject to its conditions. They are mortal, and their plane is below that of absolute spirit. Only the most advanced Hermeticists are able to grasp the inner teachings regarding the state of existence and the powers manifested on the spiritual plane. The phenomena is so much higher than that of the mental planes that a confusion of ideas would surely result from any attempt to describe the same. Only those whose minds have been carefully trained along the lines of the Hermetic philosophy for years, yes, those who have brought with them from other incarnations the knowledge acquired previously, can comprehend just what it is meant by the teaching regarding those spiritual planes. And much of these inner teachings are held by the Hermeticists as being too sacred, important, and even dangerous for general public dissemination. The intelligent student may recognize what we mean by this when we state that the meaning of spirit, as used by the Hermeticists, is akin to living power, animated force, inner essence, essence of life. If you're a Star Wars fan, the Force. Which meaning must not be confounded with that usually and commonly employed in connection with the term, i.e., religious, ecclesiastical, spiritual, ethereal, holy, etc. To occultists, the word spirit is used in the sense of the animating principle, carrying with it the idea of power, living energy, mystical force, etc. And occultists know that which is known to them as spiritual power may be employed for evil as well as good, in accordance with the principles of polarity, which we've already discussed. A fact which has been recognized by the majority of religions in their conceptions of Satan, Beelzebub, the devil, Lucifer, fallen angels, etc. And so the knowledge regarding these planes has been kept in the Holy of Holies in all esoteric fraternities and occult orders, in the secret chamber of the temple. But this may be said here, that those who have attained high spiritual powers and have misused them have a terrible fate in store for them, and the swing of the pendulum of rhythm will inevitably swing them back to the furthest extreme of material existence, from which point they must retrace their steps spiritward along the weary rounds of the path, but always with the added torture of having always with them a lingering memory of the heights from which they fell owing to their evil actions. The legends of the fallen angels have a basis in fact, as all advanced occultists know. The striving for selfish power on the spiritual planes inevitably results in the selfish soul losing its balance and falling back as far as it had risen. But to even such a soul the opportunity of a return is given. And such souls make the return journey, paying the terrible penalty according to the law. In conclusion, we would again remind you that according to the principles of correspondence, which embodies the truth, as above, so below, as below, so above, all of the 7 Hermetic principles are in full operation on all of the many planes, physical, mental, and spiritual. The principle of mental substance, of course, applies to all the planes, for all are held in the mind of the All. The principle of correspondence manifests in all, for there is a correspondence, harmony, and agreement between the several planes. The principle of vibration manifests on all planes. In fact, the very differences that go to make the planes arise from vibration, as we have explained. The principle of polarity manifests on each plane, the extremes of the poles being apparently opposite and contradictory. The principle of rhythm manifests on each plane, the movement of the phenomena having its ebb and flow, rise and flow, incoming and outgoing. The principle of cause and effect manifests on each plane, every effect having its cause and every cause having its effect. The principle of gender manifests on each plane, the creative energy being always manifest and operating along the lines of its masculine and feminine aspect. As above, so below. As below, so above. This centuries-old Hermetic axiom embodies one of the great principles of universal phenomena. As we proceed with our consideration of the remaining principles, we will see even more clearly the truth of the universal nature of this great principle of correspondence. And that, my friends, is chapter 8. We got to touch on some tangibles in that chapter. We got to touch on some things that you will hear again, depending on which your studies flow. For example, if you get into Kabbalah, a lot of what was just discussed right there, that's Kabbalah. We start getting into the various planes of existence, the worlds that the tree of life lives in, Kether being the most spiritual, the ascendance of where your goal is to go, as one example. So that was a really good foray into the various planes of existence as a list. And what I can get out of that from its immediate reading is simply the universe is a very big place, and we know very, very little of what's out there in there. Science has started to reconcile and come to terms with some of the things that we consider woo-woo as maybe being a little bit more real. But always understand that we know enough to know that we don't know anything, and we have so much more to learn. And in this state, as humans, we have risen above minerals, above plants, above animals, and we are in this incarnation, continuing to learn. But we still have a whole lot more to go. So thank you for taking this journey with me. Thank you for absorbing yet another chapter of Hermetic wisdom. And I look forward to delving into chapter 9 with you, where we will talk about vibrations. Until then, if you have any questions, please leave comments below in the video. If you liked it, drop me a like. If you like to subscribe, know when I'm going to drop something else, hit the subscribe button. Until then, may your studies bear fruit. May you stay healthy. May everything play to your favor. And I will see you soon.